The Alchemist. So if you have your book with you today, I apologize, I gave the wrong page numbers in the newsletter yesterday. I think they were from last week. So we're further along than that. And let's see how this week goes, because my gosh, I keep thinking, fewer and fewer pages, there's going to be less and less, and it's like there's more and more and more every single time. And for those who are new here, this is one of my favorite books. The new people here, have you read this book? Have you heard of this book? Okay, it is a magical book with so many universal themes that so many people can relate to. And so we are about 36 pages in, and we have been introduced to a young boy who is a shepherd. His name is Santiago, but he's referred to as the boy throughout most of the book. And he lives in Spain, but he has just now gone to Morocco because he has a dream that has had a couple of times that he can't make sense of. He's met some people along the way to help him to try and make sense of this dream because it has something to do with his purpose, or what they call a personal legend. And he's trying to find out more about it, and he's learning about himself and life along the way. And so when we last left Santiago, then he was about to go from Spain to Morocco. So I'm just going to read a little bit. To set the scene. How strange Africa is, thought the boy. He was sitting in a bar very much like the other bars he had seen along the narrow streets of Tangier. Some men were smoking from a gigantic pipe that they passed from one to the other. In just a few hours, he had seen men walking hand in hand, women with their faces covered, and priests that climbed to the tops of towers and chanted as everyone about him went to their knees and placed their foreheads on the ground. And so as he's sitting at this bar, it's occurring to him that he is very much a foreigner. He is very much a stranger in a strange land where he doesn't even speak the language that is being spoken here. And so he's not quite sure how he's going to navigate this new place that he's in, this new situation and experience that he's having. And while he's thinking about all of these things, and he goes back and forth quite a bit between, should I go back to what I was doing in Spain? Should I go back to my simple life of being a shepherd? Or should I keep pursuing this dream, this adventure that keeps sort of like niggling me along? And so as he's feeling alone and feeling like a stranger in a strange land, it's also occurring to him that he's kind of set himself up for a little bit of success anyway. He's thinking, in money, there is magic, and whoever has money is never really alone. And so he's thinking about this big pouch of money that he has because he just sold all of his sheep, before leaving Spain so that he could buy a ticket and he could have all of this money to go on his adventure. Remember, he gave 6 of his sheep to the old man who turned out to be a king, who was telling him about how there's so much more to life, to what it is that you experienced so far. So he's thinking about all this, and he's sort of going, okay, feeling a bit more confident. And he's also thinking about his relationship with his sheep and how they just used to wander. And the reason that he loved being a shepherd was because he got to travel. He thought that if he were a shepherd, that he'd be able to see the world. And so he's remembering how the sheep used to know exactly where to go. And he thinks to himself, if God leads the sheep so well, he will also lead a man. And that made him feel a lot better. And as he's thinking about these things, all of a sudden, he's thinking about the omens and the signs that the old king was telling him about when they were sitting in that plaza in Tarifa. And he's thinking about, I need to pay attention to these signs. And he's remembering that he promised the king that he would make his own decisions and not ask these 2 stones that he has for answers on how to move through life. And as he's thinking through all of this, a young Arab sits down next to him. And as he says hello, the boy realizes, oh my gosh, he's speaking Spanish. I can actually communicate with this guy. So he's so excited, he says, sit down and let me treat you to something. And ask for a glass of wine for me. I hate this tea. There is no wine in this country, the young man said. The religion here forbids it. The boy told him then that he needed to get to the pyramids. He almost began to tell him about his treasure, but decided not to do so. If he did, it was possible that the Arab would want a part of it as payment for taking him there. He remembered what the old man had said about offering something you didn't even have yet. I'd like you to take me there if you can. I can pay you to serve as my guide. Do you have any idea how to get there? The newcomer asked. The boy noticed that the owner of the bar stood nearby, listening attentively to their conversation. He felt uneasy at the man's presence, but he had found a guide and he didn't want to miss out on an opportunity. You have to cross the entire Sahara Desert, said the young man, and to do that, you need money. I need to know whether you have enough. The boy thought it a strange question, but he trusted in the old man who had said that when you really want something, the universe always conspires in your favor. He took his money from his pouch and showed it to the young man. The owner of the bar came over and looked as well. The two men exchanged some words in Arabic, and the bar owner seemed irritated. Let's get out of here, said the new arrival. He wants us to leave. The boy was relieved. He got up to pay the bill, but the owner grabbed him and began to speak to him in an angry stream of words. The boy was strong and wanted to retaliate, but he was in a foreign country. His new friend pushed the owner aside and pulled the boy outside with him. He wanted your money, he said. Tangier is not like the rest of Africa. This is a port, and every port has its thieves. The boy trusted his new friend. He had helped him out in a dangerous situation. He took out his money and counted it. We could get to the pyramids by tomorrow, said the other, taking the money. But I have to buy 2 camels first. And so this young Arab takes the boy to a market, and then there's all these people, all these stalls, all these sights and sounds and smells and textures and colors and all of this stuff that is so different that the boy has never experienced, that he's never seen. And he's just bedazzled by all of it, marveling at all of this new stuff. And then all of a sudden, right in front of him, he sees this incredible scabbard. This beautiful sword that is unlike any he has ever seen in his life. And he is so mesmerized by all the jewels, by all the silver, by the carving, everything on it. And he's thinking to himself, when I come back from the pyramids of Egypt with my treasure, I'm going to buy that sword and I'm going to take it home as a souvenir. And then it occurs to him, he's been standing there for some time and he has no idea where his new young Arab friend is. And then all of a sudden he feels it in his heart. And he's afraid to turn around because he knows what he's going to find there. So he keeps looking at the sword. He keeps focusing on how beautiful it is. And when he finally musters up the courage, he turns around and the guy's not there. And so he's standing there thinking, okay, I want to trust and know that we've just been separated, that maybe he went to look for those 2 camels that he has been talking about. But he knows, because he knows what the feeling in his heart is. And he's learning to trust his heart to be his guide. And so as he's standing there in the plaza, he realizes that the market is starting to close. And as the market is starting to close, one of the priests runs up one of the closest towers, and then everybody drops and they start to pray. And as everybody is praying and as the market is closing, the boy is realizing how alone he is. He's realizing how he has nothing. He has nothing except for what he has on him. And just a few hours earlier, he had all these sheep. He had a life that he loved. He was somewhere where he was welcomed and people loved him and accepted him. And he got to travel the world. And now he has nothing. So he starts rooting for the satchel that he has, and he starts thinking, okay, like at least I have something, right? But as the sun begins its departure, the boy watches it through the trajectory for some time until it hides behind the white houses surrounding the plaza. He recalled that when the sun had risen that morning, he was on another continent, still a shepherd with 60 sheep and looking forward to meeting with a girl. That morning, he had known everything that was going to happen to him as he walked through the familiar fields. But now, as the sun began to set, he was in a different country, a stranger in a strange land where he couldn't even speak the language. He was no longer a shepherd, and he had nothing, not even the money to return and start everything over. All this happened between sunrise and sunset. He was feeling sorry for himself and lamenting the fact that his life could have changed so suddenly and so drastically. He was so ashamed he wanted to cry. He had never wept even in front of his own sheep. But the marketplace was empty, and he was far from home, so he wept. He wept because God was unfair, and because this was the way God repaid those who believed in their dreams. When I had my sheep, I was happy, and I made those around me happy. People saw me coming and welcomed me, he thought. But now I'm sad and alone. I'm going to become bitter and distrustful of people because one person betrayed me. I'm going to hate those who have found their treasure because I never found mine. And I'm going to hold on to what little I have because I'm too insignificant to conquer the world. He opened his pouch to see what was left of his possessions. Maybe there was a bit left of the sandwich he had eaten on the ship. But all he found was the heavy book, his jacket, and the 2 stones the old man had given him. The 2 stones called Urim and Thummim. One was for yes, one was for no, and these were meant to be a guide for him in case the boy didn't know what to do. But during the conversation with the old man, who is the king, that gave these stones to him, the boy did make a promise saying, I'm always going to trust myself. I'm going to decide. I'm not going to have to use these stones because I know what I need to do. And so once again, he was reminded of the old king. And even though he'd lost everything, even though he lost that big pouch of money, which initially made him think, I'll never be alone because I have this money that has magic in it, even though he lost all of that, all of a sudden he didn't feel so alone. Because he had these 2 stones that reminded him of this profound experience that he had with this wise, wise man that opened him up to these possibilities that he'd never even thought of. And so he looked at the stones and he thought, I don't need them. I'm going to put them away. And when he put them in his pocket, they fell to the ground through a hole he didn't even know was there. But in a way, he was kind of excited because he was thinking about these omens that he needs to follow, these signs, if you will, and remembering how the old man and the king had said to him. Learn to recognize omens and follow them, the old king had said. An omen, the boy smiled to himself. He picked up the 2 stones and put them back in his pouch. He didn't consider mending the hole. The stones could fall through any time they wanted. He had learned there were certain things one shouldn't ask about so as not to flee from one's own personal legend. I promised that I would make my own decisions, he said to himself. But the stones had told him that the old man was still with him, and that made him feel more confident. He looked around at the empty plaza again, feeling less desperate than before. This wasn't a strange place. It was a new one. And so all of a sudden, he experiences another shift in perspective. And that shift in perspective allows him to have a different experience, even though the circumstances around this experience are exactly the same. He's still in that plaza by himself. All his stuff is gone except for what he has on him. But because he has this confidence, because he's reminded of this man that he had this incredible exchange with and learned so much from in one conversation, all of a sudden he's like, I have it in me. I can do this, okay? Life's not going to beat me down. And so as he mused about these things, he realized that he had to choose between thinking of himself as the poor victim of a thief and as an adventurer in quest of his treasure. I'm an adventurer looking for treasure, he said to himself. And then he goes and finds a spot in the plaza, goes to sleep. And then the next morning, he wakes up, and as some of the marketeers are setting up their stalls and their tents and everything, he sees a candy maker, and he watches him making his first batch of candy. And he realizes, without having any kind of conversation with this candy maker, that this guy is making candy not because he has to, but because he wants to. And he thinks, maybe this guy is fulfilling his personal legend by being a candy maker. And then when the first batch of candy is done, the man gives one to the boy so he has something to eat. And he's so excited about this because they did not say a word to each other. They didn't speak the same languages, so they couldn't have had a conversation using words, but they had understood each other perfectly well. There must be a language that doesn't depend on words, the boy thought. I've already had that experience with my sheep, and now it's happening with people. He was learning a lot of new things. Some of them were things that he had already experienced and weren't really new, but that he had never perceived before. And he hadn't perceived them because he had become accustomed to them. He realized, if I can learn to understand this language without words, I can learn to understand the world. Relaxed and unhurried, he resolved that he would walk through the narrow streets of Tangier. Only in that way would he be able to read the omens. He knew it would require a lot of patience, but shepherds know all about patience. Once again, he saw that in that strange land, he was applying the same lessons he had learned with his sheep. All things are one, the old man had said. End of today's reading. And so the title of my talk today is Choosing Adventure Over Circumstance. One of the things that we talk a lot about in New Thought is personal responsibility, agency, sovereignty, that we create our responsibility, no one and nothing else. There's nothing outside of us, there's no force, there's no entity, there's no one pulling any proverbial puppet strings. Nothing is completely written out. Every single moment is a brand spanking new opportunity to more fully embrace and embody the love we are, to express as the creativity we are, to experience who and what we are at our core more fully, more wholly, more intentionally. And so the point of this is that we can all have our best laid plans, we can all have our best intentions, but there are times when life is going to unfold unexpectedly, right? Sometimes not the way that we would prefer it to happen. And in that moment, as with all moments, we are at choice. And we're not just at choice standing there at a crossroads, we are choosing actively. But a lot of times we're doing it unawares. And so the point of us, the point of our life, our mission, one of our missions is to choose more consciously, to choose more intentionally. And instead of being a victim of circumstance, like having someone rob us of our money, having to give up our sheep, having to give up the life that we knew, that we loved, that we appreciated, just so we can go and follow some kind of bizarre dream to a place that we've never been to and don't even know if there's something going to be there for us, that we trust, because there is this incredible, amazing thing that we are at our core that knows. This personal legend, this mission, this purpose of life, it is always in us, just pushing itself, just trying to unleash itself in, through, and as us. And the more we remember who and what we are, that we are this incredible energy, the same energy that is the power of the blazing sun, that is every single mountain, that is every leaf on every tree, that is every single thing in the world, every single person in the world, that is the purr of a cat, the coo of a baby, all of that stuff, that we are that too. The more we remember how incredibly powerful and creative we are, the more we show up and are able to navigate those unpreferred circumstances, those unexpected circumstances, as that incredible allness, as that incredible infinite potentiality that we are at our core. So the more we align with our purpose, the more we also realize that we are never alone. We are never alone because there's only one thing going on, which means all is one. And the more that we remember that, the more that we embody that, the more that we trust that, the more that we trust that universe, God, source, whatever you want to call it, always, always, always has our back, no matter what. Thank you, and so it is.